scattered between 4,000 and 4,400 feet, and those cloud decks are about 200 feet thick. Weather at the runway end of the pad essentially out of the east at about 10 knots. So KSC weather is go. There is a discussion about the wind at White Sands at Norfolk Strip. The weather at this time is within parameters. However, as the window wears on today, they do expect the winds to increase there, and by 2 o'clock this afternoon, then they would expect that the winds would be out of tolerance. White Sands would be used in the event of an abort once around. Among the turnaround activities over the past week has been the removal of the batteries from the Hubble Space Telescope, and we will show you a video now of the activity surrounding the batteries. Here they have just been removed from the payload changeout room and have been placed on transportation carts to be taken down the elevators of the fixed service structure and taken to an awaiting truck for transportation to the battery lab, which is located in the vehicle assembly building. This occurred last Saturday night.
What's that, Jerry?
Each set of batteries, there are two, there are 6 batteries in each set, and the set weighs about 400 pounds. This is the removal of the batteries from the payload changeout room and heading toward the elevators. This decision was made because the batteries can be charged in a colder environment in the battery lab than they can in the telescope on board Discovery. If these batteries are dropped to a temperature of 32 degrees Fahrenheit, then they will take on a charge very readily, and we would get more charge than we could get in the payload changeout room. We can supply a purge to the batteries of about 45 degrees while they're in the telescope in the payload bay, but if they're taken to the battery lab, then they can be dropped to freezing, where nickel hydrogen batteries charge easily and a full charge could be obtained, where in the time available probably not a full charge could be obtained at the pad under a 45-degree purge. The bottom line is that this gives us an extra day of contingency should we need it. We would have launch attempts through Saturday as far as Hubble Space Telescope is concerned, so as compared to our first launch attempt where we had 4 days, with our batteries now fully charged, we have 5. The batteries are a bridge between disconnecting the HST to orbiter umbilicals for deployment and the time that the solar panels are actually deployed on the telescope. Batteries also supply power while the telescope is in eclipse on the dark side of the Earth. This is the transfer aisle of the vehicle assembly building, and here you can see the truck arriving with the batteries for transportation to the lab. There's nothing unusual about the truck in which they're transported. It's a standard delivery truck.
And we're configured now. I can verify 650. Okay, and you can perform your crew module for initial cabin 2 PSI leak check, proceed with 45. Copy. Roaming is KMT 143.
Total charge time on the batteries while they were in the battery lab was 130 hours.
And CDR to notify ECL cabin pressure master alarm. Cabin collection master alarm will also sound due to high cabin decay rate.
Yeah, CDR, you copy that?
The payload bay doors of Discovery were closed during the battery charging activity to provide a very clean environment for the telescope. Class 100 air can be circulated around the telescope while the doors are closed. This is the scene in the battery lab, and here we see the facility where the batteries will be dropped to freezing and that temperature monitored to take on that charge. The batteries were taken back out to the pad last Friday and reinstalled Friday night, leading up to a test on Saturday morning to verify those connections and the health of the batteries, and then the payload bay doors were closed on Saturday night about 10:15 p.m. The launch team and the flight crew now are beginning the cabin leak checks, now with the access hatch of Discovery closed. And we continue toward an on-time liftoff this morning at 8:31 a.m. Eastern Time. At T-minus 1 hour, 3 minutes, 20 seconds and counting, this is Shuttle Launch Control.
And RCRE, OTC.
OTC, we copy.
This RCRE. Yeah, we want to support S-band to high power on 232, please. Go on 232.
DCFE going through 232. OTC, CL212.
Go ahead.
I need a reading off of panel 01 from the CDR.
CDR, OTC.
Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead, ECL.
I need a reading on panel 01 for the cabin pressure. Okay, we see about 14.6 here. I copy, thank you.
CME OTC.
Yeah, 659 through 662 complete.
Okay, you can pick up step 684 at this time.
Copy.
And GLS OTC.
Go ahead.
You can pick up GLS mainline activation by the clock.
Yes, sir, we copy.
This is shuttle launch control at T-minus 56 minutes and counting. The solid rocket booster test conductor has been asked to verify the chamber pressure in the solid rocket motors. Transducers measure the pressure in the thrust chamber at the nozzle of the boosters. This information is used to tell the computer when to separate the solid rocket boosters in flight. All is continuing to go well with this morning's countdown. The flight crew is aboard the Space Shuttle Atlantis. The pre-flight alignment of the inertial measurement units has picked up and will be completed during the T-minus 20-minute built-in hold. The crew module closeout will be coming up in about the next 20 minutes. The Mila tracking station at KSC has now switched from low power to high power for the liftoff. Once Discovery lifts off from the launch pad, NASA tracking stations which furnish launch support will provide the air-to-ground voice, data, and telemetry. During launch, the Mila tracking station at KSC will follow the vehicle for 6.5 minutes. The Bermuda station will track until launch plus 11 minutes, and then the tracking and data relay satellite system will provide coverage beginning at the 11-minute mark and for the duration of the mission. During the second minute of flight, the Ponce de Leon Inlet tracking station north of the Cape, located near New Smyrna Beach, becomes the primary communications link. During about a minute period when the signal at KSC is being attenuated by the reflective plume of the solid rocket boosters, this station becomes necessary. Overseas, NASA's tracking station at Dakar, Senegal is tracking from the east coast of Africa and would be called on for support in the event of an abort once around. At the end of the mission, on the approach to California for landing at Edwards Air Force Base, the Goldstone tracking station and the Oak Mountain tracking station at Vandenberg Air Force Base can track the shuttle during the terminal phase of the mission. The weather continues to be favorable here at KSC for a launch this morning. We do not have any significant technical issues in work, and at this time we do not see any constraints to a launch at 8:31 a.m. this morning. The launch period would extend until 2:43 this afternoon. However, our limitation for the crew on board Discovery would expire at 11 a.m. At T-minus 53 minutes, 20 seconds and counting, this is shuttle launch control.
OTC, CMQC. Go ahead. We had a line item 82 and it has been canceled. It appears to be a mileage problem. Copy. Go ahead, Randy.
This is shuttle launch control at T-minus 47 minutes, 15 seconds and counting. Cape weather confirms that the latest Gymsphere, the upper air wind balloon, has just been released to finalize our upper air wind data. Looking at our satellite picture from offshore, there are areas of scattered clouds over the ocean that will move inland and will go variable to broken occasionally, but this will not be a factor during the launch other than intermittently. The forecast continues to reflect generally scattered clouds over the launch site. Range Safety has recently told the NASA test director that their range safety checks of the safe and arm devices on the space shuttle have been completed, and that is satisfactory. And all is continuing to go well in this morning's countdown. There are no constraints to an 8:31 a.m. liftoff this morning. If the space shuttle lifts off on time, then Discovery's twin orbital maneuvering system pods will fire at 9:17 this morning to circularize the orbit at 380 statute miles. At about 10 a.m., the payload bay doors of Discovery will be opened. The major activity for the first day of flight will be to check out the remote manipulator arm, activate the protein crystal growth experiment, and to check out the contingency EVA suits, flight suits. Shortly after 7:30 tonight, the crew will go to bed. On flight day 2, the astronauts will begin their first full day in orbit shortly after 3:30 in the morning.
Roger that.
At about 7:45, astronaut Steve Hawley will lock the remote manipulator arm onto the telescope, and then the 4 latches that are holding the telescope into the payload bay will be released. At about 8:20 a.m., the umbilicals connecting the telescope with Discovery will be released, and Hawley will lift the telescope from its mounts in the payload bay. Then one of the significant milestones of the deployment will come at about 9 a.m. when the solar arrays will be unfurled. And if they do not unfurl properly, that is where Bruce McCandless and Kathy Sullivan have an option to do an EVA to attempt repairs. If all goes well, when the solar panels are deployed, then the crew will break for lunch and at around noon begin the operation to deploy the telescope's radio antennas. The next major milestone comes at 1:30 in the afternoon when the telescope will be rotated into position for release with the nose pointing down toward Discovery's tail. And the final event will be at 1:54 p.m. when Steve Hawley is scheduled to release the Hubble Space Telescope from Discovery. The shuttle will then back off to a distance of about 45 miles so that the aperture door of the telescope can be opened without fear of contamination, and the telescope can be checked out. After the deployment is complete, the HST communications will be with the Space Telescope Operations Control Center on the ground at the Goddard Space Flight Center, which will be via the tracking and data relay satellites. Otherwise, repair and refurbishment missions are expected to be necessary every 3 to 5 years. The remaining days on orbit for STS-31 will be devoted to the protein crystal growth experiment, the radiation monitoring equipment experiment, a shuttle student involvement project, and the Air Force Maui optical site calibration tests. Next Sunday morning at 1:30 a.m., the astronauts will be awakened to begin their preparations for a return to Edwards Air Force Base. Shortly before 5 a.m., the shuttle's payload bay doors will be closed for the re-entry. The deorbit burn will occur at 9:31 a.m., and the end of the mission will be at 10:02 a.m. Eastern Time at Edwards Air Force Base. The launch countdown continuing on schedule for a launch now which is just over an hour away. At T-minus 42 minutes, 20 seconds and counting, this is shuttle launch control.
go.
Can pick up 737.
Copy and work. OTC, CL212.
Go ahead.
Okay, I can give you 725.
Copy that. CDR OTC, air to ground 1.
CDR, go ahead.
Okay, we can perform our cabin vent redundancy configure this time. On panel L2A1.
Set.
Vent ISO switch close until the vent ISO talkback shows closed.
That's complete.
And the vent switch open until the vent talkback shows open.
That's complete.
All right, copy. ECL OTC.
Go ahead.
Yeah, 746.
Copy. Okay, we're going to monitor that for a few more minutes.
Okay.
OTC, CL 212.
Go ahead.
Okay, we can give you step 746 this time.
Okay. How about 747?
Okay, it'll be 0.008.
HC CCD OTC. This is CCD, can you ready for the captain's event? Oh, that's affirmed. Copy that. CDR OTC, air to ground.
Go ahead.
You want to open the captain's vent ISO valve and the klaxon and master alarms may occur in the next step.
Roger.
Panel L2A1, the vent ISO switch open until the vent ISO talkback shows open.
That's complete. And we have the klaxon.
And ECL.
I can verify step 751.
And CDR, verify.
This is shuttle launch control at T-minus 36 minutes and counting.
That's affirmative. It is decreasing.
The SRO, which is the Superintendent of Range Operations, has just informed the NASA Test Director that the range is ready for launch, meaning that the downrange shipping lanes are clear, that the booster splashdown area is clear, and that all of the Air Force Eastern Test Range downrange tracking stations are up and ready to support. The ground launch sequencer mainline computer program has been activated and is now actually processing data. This program will monitor various key commands and systems prior to assuming control of the countdown at the T-minus 9-minute and counting mark. The shuttle weather officer in the Cape Canaveral forecast facility will be giving Launch Director Bob Seek a briefing at the T-minus 25-minute mark in about 10 minutes. We've received word that the latest wind balloon, the Gymsphere, has completed its run at 56,700 feet, and that data is now being processed. Much of the activity over the last week has been associated with changing out Discovery's #1 auxiliary power unit, which was removed last Saturday and sent back to the vendor for analysis. A new one was on hand and ready for installation, and we have video of that unit being prepared for transportation to the launch pad.
Discovery Houston, SIMO air-to-ground voice checks, Eddie Reed.
The auxiliary power unit, which presented the problem, was found to
After that, MS's 1, 2, and 3.
have a chip in one of the valves that's involved with regulating the flow of hydrazine. Therefore, what we found was a one-time hardware problem
MS3.
and not an overall design or engineering concern. This is the replacement auxiliary power unit being prepared for transportation. In the back, there is the one that was taken out and was shipped back to the vendor for analysis.
Altimeter setting of 30.
That is the aft area of Discovery where the replacement auxiliary power unit will be installed, and adjacent is the external tank and the solid rocket boosters.
Now what we're working, manual right now is a single string for TACANs.
The replacement
We're planning on going
unit was transported to the pad on Saturday and was connected
possibility of a 3,000
on Sunday. Most of that work was completed in time to give most of the team the rest of the Easter Sunday period off.
Primary TACAN back up again. We may yet declare manual.
After the installation, the replacement auxiliary power unit was hot-fired, was run for a little over 5 minutes to verify that there would not be a repeat of the problem that we had before, and to give it the same amount of runtime as the other auxiliary power units which are on board Discovery. And that test went fine.
Okay, Steve, we copy.
And CDR OTC, air to ground 1.
This now is going into the aft area for the installation. In parallel with this activity, the payload bay doors of Discovery were closed and the batteries for the Hubble Space Telescope were back in the battery lab being charged. This procedure had not been done vertically before. It had been done in the hangars. So that procedure was modified with some contingency time built in to allow for any problems should they be encountered, this being a new approach. However, the change out and the retest went very well. Most of that contingency time was not used, and with the Hubble battery charging getting started a little bit earlier, then all things came together to make it possible to move up our launch date from the 25th to the 24th.
And that's the Northrop 2-3.
We're now at T-minus 31 minutes 50, T-minus 30 minutes 55 seconds and counting, leading toward an 8:31 a.m. liftoff this morning. This is Shuttle Launch Control.
Peter below SOTC.
Still left, good.
Can you verify anything on your CRTs? G and 2 press.
Yeah, they're verified.
Copy. OTC, OVCC. Go ahead. Yes, sir. I'll support setup 20. Side hatch closeout and white room configuration is complete. We're ready to clear the pad. Okay. H back at 811. Copy that. OSC, OTC. C1C, go ahead. Okay, you want to pick up 774, please? 774 through 778 are complete. Copy that. OTC, TSL. Go ahead. Yes, sir. Step 787 is complete. Copy. OTC, CCD. Go ahead. 768 complete. Copy. LVCC, OTC. ISL OTC. Sasha, go ahead. Are you ready for the next pre-flight bites? Yes, I am. EPD. EPD copy. OTC, EPD. Go ahead. I can give you step 790. Okay. CLS OTC. CLS 212. Yeah, you want to pick up 791 by the clock, please. Copy 791 by the clock. OTC, CL212. Go ahead. I can give you step 807. Copy that. CDR OTC, air to ground 1.
CDR
cabin press at this time, please.
The gauge looks like about 14.8.
Copy that. ACL.
Okay, on 809, I have 14.82.
Okay, CDR on the CRT-3. EFS system page 1. Report your cabin press, please.
And OTC CDR cabin press is 14.7 on the CRT.
Copy that. And CDR, at this time, you can close your cabin vent valves.
Inward. OTC CDR, both the vent ISO and vent are closed.
Copy that, ACL.
And I can give you 814.
Copy. PVD OTC.
This PVD, go ahead.
We're going to be performing steps 821 through 23.
Negative will be all not performed.
AFM OTC. AFM, go ahead. You can do your start check or door open indication status check at this time. It works.
The countdown clock will hold at T-minus 20 minutes in approximately 4 minutes.
OTC AFM. Go ahead. I can give you step 831. Copy. All operator systems on channel 212. Verify your program software and report only if any discrepancies. OTC.
CVSS.
And RAS number for me on 827.
That's 031.41.
Thank you. ARPS OTC. ARPS OTC channel 212.
ARPS.
Yeah, you want to pick up step 838 and change the MTU test set to delay 0?
That's complete.
Thank you. EPS OTC.
Yes.
Can you verify 2 consecutive OC task concurrencies available?
That's verified.
Thank you.
This is shuttle launch control at T-minus 20 minutes, 30 seconds, and counting. We are preparing now to enter the T-minus 20-minute built-in hold. This hold will last for 10 minutes. During this period, the NASA test director will ask members of the launch team to verify that the proper software has been loaded aboard for the remainder of the countdown, and we'll get verification that the pre-flight inertial measurement unit alignment has been completed. Going into the hold now in 3, 2, 1, T-minus 20 minutes and holding for 10 minutes. The landing and recovery director has reported that the shuttle landing facility is ready and configured for launch and has verified that the booster recovery ships are on station and ready to support. The NASA test director is about to brief the launch team on recycle options during the remainder of the countdown. From now until T-minus 31 seconds, any of the console operators can ask that the countdown be held if a problem is detected. After T-minus 31 seconds, however, any unplanned hold would result in an automatic cutoff of the countdown and a recycle back to the T-minus 20-minute mark. The launch director has just been given an update on the weather. We continue to see mostly scattered clouds offshore, gradually moving onshore, and they are not expected to be a constraint as they move onshore and into the area. They are being evaluated by Dan Brandenstein in the shuttle training aircraft as he makes approaches to the shuttle landing facility. Overseas, Banjul weather is acceptable, reporting clouds 12,000 scattered, 20,000 thin broken, visibility 6, and northeasterly winds 10 to 15.
KVFX active on 212. HTD.
Here at KSC, our winds running mostly from the east at 10 to 12, and the status board at the Cape Canaveral forecast facility reflecting shuttle weather constraints is all green at this time. At T-minus 20 minutes and holding, this is shuttle launch control.
SRO NTD 212. SRO NTD 212.
NTD, this is GOS. I see him coming in weak. We're working the problem.
Copy.
NTD CGLS on 212.
Go ahead, John.
Yes, sir. The countdown clock will start at 12:01 GMT.
Copy. OTC EPD.
Go ahead.
Did I get a CMQC on 151?
CMQC OTC. The CMQC, go ahead. Yeah, EPD OTC.
Go ahead.
What are you doing?
Either for the fuel cell load sharing adjust.
Okay, yeah, 151 QC.
Stop looking at it.
Copy.
OTC CFCP.
Go ahead.
Yeah, can we get a CMQC on 153?
Same thing?
That's front for our purge.
Okay. CMQC. Copy 153. OTC, Seattle. Go ahead. Yes, sir, we also need a CMQC on 145 for our recorder activation later on.
CMQC.
Copy, 145.
SRO NTD 212.
NTD RSO, read you loud and clear on 212. 212.
RSO NTD 212.
NTD
RSO NTD, do you copy on 212?
OTC, TP.
Go ahead.
Can I speak to COOS on 161?
COOS OTC.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, can you go 161 with TPE, please?
Yeah, going 161. NTD Safety 212.
Go ahead, sir.
Yes, sir, I can give you step 966, closeout crew at AB11. Have you got any words on step 798?
STM NTD. STM NTD 212.
Says team, go ahead.
You have a verification of 798.
We've got the CCF clear. We're still waiting on the LDA.
Copy. This is NTD on 212 and 232 conducting the T-minus 20-minute briefing. The launch window opens at 12:31 GMT and closes at 18:43 GMT. A second launch attempt is possible if a recycle occurs. There are 3 COLAs for today. COLA 1 opens at 12:58:30 GMT and closes at 12:59:30 GMT. COLA 2 starts at 14:32 GMT and ends at 14:37:30 GMT. COLA number 3 opens at 16:12 GMT and closes at 16:13 GMT. If a hold is requested and issued between T-minus 9 minutes and T-minus 31 seconds, the countdown clock will be restarted upon successful resolution of the problem without a go survey made of all elements. PLT at T-minus 5 minutes perform APU start upon command of OTC only.
CLT copies.
CDR, the pad egress system is nominal and the evacuation helipad is 8.
Okay, we copy 8. Thank you.
Firing room launch team, disable telephone ringers at this time. Ingress and egress of the firing room will not be allowed after resuming the count at T-minus 20 minutes until after launch or flight crew egress if a recycle occurs. If an extended hold is required at T-minus 9 minutes, limited firing room access will be allowed. All personnel bear in mind that critical post-launch operations will be in progress after a successful launch, so keep firing room activities and noise to a minimum. Are there any questions? That concludes the briefing. Flight NTD. Houston Flight NTD 212. Houston Flight NTD, air to ground 1.
Okay, NTD Flight 212.
Okay, step 897A, you can proceed with transmission of your variable ascent parameters.
Go ahead,
Hey, welcome.
CC.
And flight, can you verify that you're ready?
That's correct, sir.
Houston Flight NTD.
This flight go.
Step 898, can you verify ready to resume the count in 20 minutes?
Okay, stand by 1 second, NTD. NTD Flight is go.
Understand. The countdown clock will start at T-minus 20 minutes in 2 minutes.
OTC CTMC. Go. I can report step 897. IMU pre-flight alignment is complete. Ready for transition to OPS 1. OPS transition must occur within 10 minutes. Your GMT time there is 11:58.
11:58, copy.
And I can also report completion on steps 899 and 900.
Copy that.
NTD copy.
NTD STM 212.
Go ahead, STM.
Okay, step 798.
212 this OTC. After transition to Ops 101, discontinue all LDB PMU reads for remainder of count.
Safety console in today. Safety console 798 is complete. Copy.
This is shuttle launch control at T-minus 20 minutes and holding. We are just about 1 minute away from picking up the countdown at the T-minus 20 minute mark.
Yeah, CMQC.
As we come out of the hold, Discovery's onboard computers will transition into the terminal countdown configuration, and we will dump the computer memory of one of the 4 primary computers so that we can look at the data and make sure that the Ops 101 program, which is the primary program, has been stored properly and that there are no unexpected results.
Copy that.
Taking up the count now in about 20 seconds.
I copy that, please. 966 also.
Again, we're still aiming toward an 8:31 a.m. liftoff. We have no constraints with the shuttle or weather-wise. Picking up now in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. T-minus 20 minutes and counting.
SCP OTC.
Purge of Discovery's 3 fuel cells is now underway. The data processing system engineer has confirmed that the onboard computers are in the process of making the transition to the terminal countdown configuration.
Loud clear, I copy.
We do have 3 COLAs today during the period, which extends from 8:31 to 2:43. There would be a collision avoidance quotient that would begin at 8:58:30 this morning and run for 1 minute. There would be another one at 10:32 this morning, which would last for 5.5 minutes, and another one at 12:12 this afternoon, which would last for 1 minute. That last one, however, would be academic in light of the fact that the crew time in the cockpit of Discovery would expire at 11 a.m.
DEPP OTC here to ground 1.
All activity continues on schedule as we proceed toward the next hold at T-minus 9 minutes. The primary ascent software is now in the Ops 101 mode, which is the primary launch program, and Commander Shriver will now configure the backup flight system computer to match that configuration. T-minus 18 minutes, 20 seconds and counting.
NTD STM 212.
Go ahead, STM.
Step 916. Will that be performed or not performed, sir?
That's not performed.
Copy.
OTC, CDR, at PFS is an Ops 1, no unexpected messages.
Copy that, thank you. And PLT, OTC?
Go ahead, Sam.
Okay, configure pass and BFS horizontal SIP displays per your checklist, please.
Commander Shriver has reported that the backup flight system is now in the proper mode. And we just saw astronaut Dan Brandenstein flying the shuttle training aircraft, doing the weather reconnaissance and assessing the conditions at the shuttle landing facility in the event of a return to launch site abort. He's reporting that data to support astronaut Ken Reichler and astronaut Jim Weatherby here in the firing room.